So you spend all of this time, energy, spend hours and hours, years developing your ultimate home theater or two-channel system, invested all of this money into getting this top tier, high-end gear, right? Across your amplifier, your processor, speakers, whatever. You got everything dialed in, positioned well, but then something still feels off, right? Something still doesn't sound right, despite all of that. And then you start thinking, it's like, well, gosh, I did everything. Is there another element, another aspect of my home theater system that I also need to invest in, that I need to try to address to get the ultimate sound? What could that be? What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel, True Techno Gamer. Thank you for watching. Again, please like, subscribe to the channel, continue to show me support. This is a good one, guys. We're going to start this off, kick this off right. The start of this video, that intro, was intentional. What you saw was me in the back part of my room. As you saw, there was nothing really on the walls except for a poster and some speakers, but the walls were pretty plain. And if you have any kind of decent audio equipment as you're listening to this, even through your smartphone, you probably can hear the difference in my voice and how I sounded on that intro versus even now when I have these panels and I'm in my kind of main theater area. So I introduced the video to talking about pretty much my story, right? So you invest in everything, right? You have great equipment, everything's looking good, but there's still issues, there's still things that don't quite sound right? And it's like, well, what else could you do, right? What else could that be? And the answer is evident, hopefully, in that intro and me talking now. It's in the room, right? So this is the start of me going down the rabbit hole that is room treatments and acoustical treatments. This is the point of this channel. Let me remind you guys, right? But I try to put out meaningful content for regular people because I know that there are people out there that are in my shoes, that are in my position, that are thinking about the things that I'm thinking about in terms of what can I do with my home theater? What goes into some of those buying decisions? Why should I pick this over that? These kind of things. There are just so many options out there for home theater right now. So many for everything. So it can be overwhelming. And that's why most people like myself in this hobby, I've been doing this technically for 25 years. Doing this meaning I've had some kind of home theater in my system for 25 years. I've been obviously aged quite a bit, different places, different stages of my life. I was a student and whatever. But it all was learning for me to get to where I'm at now, okay? Now, I went along that journey. I called this journey to Endgame. I've been talking about this, and if you follow my channel at all, you probably have seen that I have built a pretty kick-ass system, I'm gonna say. Like, it's something that I am very proud of, and I honestly never thought that I would even get to this point. God blessed me tremendously, and I'm very fortunate, to be in the position that I am. And, I got flagship products, flagship gear from some really high-end reputable companies. Yet and still, take time, listen to my system. There's still some things, right, that could be better, right? Now, the interesting thing is, as I thought about that and reflected on that, it became very clear to me one thing, that the things that I am talking about improving on will not get better by just getting new equipment, right? That became obvious and evident to me pretty early on, right? Like, and I'll explain why, but it's like, I've gone through the evolution of various equipments, various, components in my system, and I've gotten things dialed in as best as I can, but there's still some things that I just feel like it's not optimal and not maximizing. And it's like, if I was just to replace a speaker or an amplifier or whatever, that wouldn't really do it, right? That wouldn't really solve these problems, right? So when I'm thinking about that, and again, I know a lot of you guys can relate to this. When I'm thinking about that, it really got me thinking like, okay, well, what else can I do? And then the answer, of course, was, well, the only other component of my system, arguably the most important component of the system, is the room itself, right? Now, this first part, I'm going to talk about my motivation for going down this rabbit hole, something that I've honestly avoided for 25 years as I've been building systems, right? And why now? And then in the future, second part, I'm going to go over probably more in detail the room treatment changes that I'm going to make and the products that I'm going to get. And I'll go over, them in detail. And then probably part 3 will be, what are the results? Did it actually work? That kind of thing, right? So first, I want to start with the motivation because this is important, right? Like for people thinking about this, room treatments, room control, sound treatments in your room, people say it's like the most important thing, right? It's arguably the most important thing in a home theater. You could get $1 million worth of equipment. It can sound really bad in a really bad acoustic room that's not treated, right? That's the idea. And you can just have a relatively modest system, right? A couple $100, couple $1,000 for your total system, but it can sound great if it's in a nice treated room, right? Now, of course, if you go to a commercial movie theater and you see people that are really, really serious about home theater, almost all of them, they're gonna have an extensive room treatments all around. Your commercial theater is pretty much padded, walls, ceilings, flooring is covered with acoustic material to absorb and reflect sound strategically, to control the sound, right? Now, so I've been researching this now for months. I've been talking to a bunch of people. I'll go into more. I really have been learning. Now, why have I not done this before now, right? And the answer for me is, I don't know. I just, I've always had my systems in, again, real world settings, a living room, a basement area, right? An apartment, I'm not in a recording studio. I'm not in a home theater. I'm not in a dedicated theater. And I just didn't necessarily think that it was that important, quite frankly. It was that vital to me getting, I would say the most enjoyment out of my system, right? Like, I was of the mindset that, I know that there is just so much more upgrades I can do in terms of gear that can still get me better sound, get me more enjoyment out of my system for music and movies or whatever. And I knew I wasn't there. I didn't have the funds. I was at different times in my life. So I'm like, let me go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, of just upgrading my equipment, getting the best equipment to do the best job. And I'll be able to be more than satisfied for me, right? Because what I'm coming from is a boombox, right? Quite frankly, right? I just never seen it, never came across, seeing room treatments like that. So I just didn't prioritize it. Right, I kept hearing about it as I got deeper and deeper into the hobby. Oh, you got to treat your room, whatever. And I'm just like, for the rooms that I had, again, apartments and temporary living and living rooms, I'm like, I'm not going to go and put sound panels all over the place. It's not going to look right. My girlfriend, wife is not going to, earlier girlfriend, later wife was not going to really approve. And, it just aesthetically wasn't pleasing, right? So there's a lot of things to consider there. Now, once I move into this house, I did say that, at some point I want to get some level of room treatment, right? And that's kind of what I've done. That's kind of what I have, right? I don't have a whole lot, but I have something, right? It does make a little bit of a difference if you could hear me now, my voice now, relative to what it sounded like in the back part of my room, which has no treatments whatsoever. It's extremely echoey back there. I can even hear it. But back here, this is kind of meant to be like the first reflection point from my speaker, at least one speaker here, kind of getting, a reflection point from the other speaker there. I have one on the other wall as far as I can before the stairwell there. And then I just had some kind of behind on the back wall here. The problem is that most of this stuff was done pretty naively, right? I didn't do extensive analysis of my room and measurements and calculations to know where to put what. Right. And I also didn't put a whole lot. Right. You see people with way smaller spaces that have a whole lot more equipment. Right. And there's obviously reasons for that, too. So I did the base, to me, the bare minimum. This is probably the most interesting part for you guys, has to do with, again, thinking about ways to improve and optimize my system, right? So in terms of the sound quality. Now, there's 3 key things that I would say that I noticed that are areas of improvement from my system. And as I thought about those things, again, it became really clear that the answer wasn't to buy new equipment. The answer wasn't to switch out a component that wasn't going to solve my problems, okay? The first thing that I wanted to talk about is what I would call the intimacy or focus of the sound, right? The idea that when I sit in my space, I just want to get immersed, right? And I do my system already does a pretty good job of doing that. But I couldn't help but notice that there is this sense that the sound is not very focused towards me or for me, right? You know what I mean? It's almost as if I'm sitting in my seat and I literally find myself almost chasing the sound. When there's something that's supposed to be going on over here, I'm kind of got to lean in to hear it more. When there's something going on over here, I got to lean this way to hear it more. I got to chase the sound in my room more. Where it just doesn't sound focused. It literally sounds like the sound is just kind of being scattered. It's kind of being out there. And I know now what that sounds like because I have heard both commercially, boutique stores, at events, and even some people that I know that have a dedicated home theater that they, got somebody paid to really do full treatments on. I know what it sounds like when you have a fully treated room that is just quiet, the noise floor is like non-existent, and the sound just seems like it's only you and the sound, right? You know what I mean? Like, I know what that sounds like, and my system does not have that, right? That's what I mean by intimacy, right? So I want to get more of that. I want to be able to really come in here when I really can and just get lost in the sound that much more, okay? So that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing that, I would say was a real area of improvement for me is overall clarity, specifically dialogue clarity, okay? This is a big one for me, particularly thinking about the center channel. Because in 25 years, I would say that this has always been a thing for me, where I felt like the center channel just wasn't as clear as it could be. And it's been driving me crazy. But as I sit here now in 2025, I'm thinking, okay, in the last 25 years, I've had 4 or 5 different center channels. Big, small, cheap, expensive, right? It doesn't matter. I've been in multiple different rooms, right? For houses, apartments, everything, right? I've had a bunch of different other supporting gear, specifically processing, amplification, right? I've had receivers to obviously a powerful, 2-channel amp and powerful multi-channel amps now. I literally have attacked every other aspect of this, right? Is what I'm getting at. And it's like, for a while I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I just need a better, I had a receiver. I had an Onkyo receiver when I started. Maybe I just need a better power, right? Better power, bigger power, go separates, blah, blah, blah. I went separates. Right, and then I started with like an Emotiva amp, and it was like, okay, well, I just need a higher quality amp, right? I mean, I just kept doing that, but I still wasn't getting the clarity and focus and dialogue clarity from the center channel in particular that I felt was necessary, should have been warranted, given the equipment that I had. I started with, again, a small Polk audio system, literally a sub-satellite system, right? A small, tiny center channel, and now, I obviously have this huge 6-driver Persona center channel, and before that I had a still big Paradigm Studio Reference center channel. Beryllium tweeter, Beryllium mid-range, right? All about transparency, but it's still not super clear, right? Like it still seems like something's missing in the clarity, the dialogue clarity. Always been a thing. So having attacked every other aspect, the only thing that is possibly left is to just do better with the room treatments, right? Do better with the room treatments, right? That's the only thing I can do, right? And talking to folks, it's like, that's one of the main advantages, right? For room treatments is getting better clarity. That's one of the key points. That's actually one of the key metrics in how they evaluate just how good your room is treated, is by looking at the dialogue clarity and just the overall clarity of the system. which, would come with that, right? So that's the key point for me. The third thing, you probably have guessed it, but the third thing that I'm looking to improve on the system is just the overall bass response, okay? Again, people have said, you're upgrading all of this stuff over the last few years. What about your subs, man? Why are you not upgrading your subs, right? And it's like, my answer has been consistent for years. It's kind of like, well, I'm not fully maximizing these subs, I feel, right? These SVS SP16 Ultras. Yeah, I've had these subs now for 7 years, and the subs themselves are what, 10 years old since they came out. I'm not fully maximizing them, right? Like, I literally don't play them. I mean, they're at minus 20, minus 18 on the subs themselves. And I don't usually play my system more like beyond minus 25 on the Anthem. That's typical for me, unless I'm doing a test or, very frequently I need to push it beyond that. That's loud in this big room. That's still pretty loud, right? So I just, what am I upgrading for, right? Is it just about power, right? Like, I don't know. The one thing that I always have acknowledged that I would said about was an issue with bass in my room. It was a issue with bass in my room. It wasn't something like I felt like was lacking with the SVS subs necessarily. I can definitely, tell the hot spots in my room. Certain spots the bass is higher, certain spots the bass is lower. Unfortunately, my seating area is actually a big no in my room. It just is what it is with the room modes, right? Now, for the longest time, I'm like, there's nothing I can do about that. That's the room, right? That's kind of what it is. You know what I mean? But I've been learning more and hearing more, and that, proper bass treatments can do a lot. It won't completely eliminate it. I get that. I'm not expecting that. But it can do a lot to help balance and smooth out your bass response. Not even just your bass response, but your overall clarity and just, getting your system to sound smoother. By trapping the higher end bass in certain key spots, obviously the corners and just even along the walls, by trapping bass more, you prevent the buildup of the peak bass, which in turn, right, minimizes the notes. For every peak, there's a note, right? Because there's waves going around, they're either combining to accentuate or they're canceling each other out. So if you can minimize some of those waves, they're going to basically reduce the peaks, but also bring up some of the notes. And that's what I really, really hope can happen, and that my main seating area and across the 4 seats can be a much more even, bass response. And again, this is one of those things that it's like over that entire time, I've had, again, many, many different subwoofers, many, many different rooms and spaces. I know I had some really, really good subs. But in my special seating area, especially, like, I just never felt like I was getting a maximum impact and getting that real full pressurized feeling. I've actually dialed this space in pretty well with my dual subs in the opposite corners here, using arc and everything. The bass is solid from my seating. I can hear most of it. I know if I stand up and walk around, though, there is, higher levels of it throughout other parts of the room, though. So I can still tell that. But from my main seating area, it's pretty good. I actually like it because it's really tight and it's really precise. It's not about it being boomy and just pressurizing and shaking me out my chair. But it's there when it needs to be, but it sounds really nice and precise. It's more of a quality bass that I have now dialed in. So that's cool. But again, I know what's possible. I have heard demos, been at other people's houses. When their bass is going on, it is like a visceral reaction, right? That, the user can get, that I have felt, where I'm just like, wow, like I've never gotten that in my house. Any house that I've had, not just this house. I've just never gotten that sensation. So I'm chasing that, like, man, if I can get that to the point where, yeah, I'm able to get that just visceralness and pressurization without being overbearing and overwhelming, that'll be awesome, right? That's, to me, like the next frontier in terms of the bass response. But I know now that I can't do that without, trying to do better with getting more even bass response and treating the room for bass, right? So those are kind of the 3 things I'm looking for: dialogue clarity, better bass response, and then just a more focused, intimate sound. And it should be obvious that, again, buying new equipment isn't going to help that. Like I was saying with the bass, people would say that, oh, upgrade your subs and, you know, you got all those other grades. It's like, well, that's not my problem, right? Like new subs, I can get whatever subs and they're still going to sound, I'm still going to have a null right there. I'm not going to hear certain frequencies. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be that. Maybe there's other aspects of it, of course, that still could be improved from having a different sub. But by and large, my biggest issue, like if I had this room dialed in and I can get all of the bass that I can get from these SBS subs, I know I would be more than satisfied, you know, but I'm not. I wasn't there yet. So, you know, that's why now is the time, right? It became clear to me that if I really want to, and the other thing is, if I'm going to invest this kind of money into a system like this, you know, you want to feed it, right? And you want to do everything possible to maximize it. That's what it's about, right? Maximizing it. And that's part of the fun and pain of this hobby, right? Like it takes a lot to maximize this stuff. It's not like you just go and buy whatever and you're done. And people have said that, you know, and when I was at a different stage, like I just didn't even get that. And as I'm down much deeper in the rabbit hole, I understand like what people are doing, what these audiophiles are trying to do when they're investing in stuff like cables and power conditioner, right? And, you know, these kind of things and room treatments and panels. Like I get it now because you just want to maximize what you have. If I had a home theater in a box, right? I mean, probably not that big of a deal, right? Just saying, right? I'm a home theater box, sound bar upstairs, like I have no treatments upstairs. It's fine. But for a room like this, where I've invested this kind of money and this kind of just time and energy, you want to maximize it. And there is probably nothing better to maximize your system than doing the room treatment. So that's essentially my motivation, right? Now, going down this path, I have talked to people, I've talked to experts, I've gotten feedback on my room. I literally have had people, I sent videos and photos and people, you know, I'll go more into this probably in the next video, but, you know, we did a 3D scan of my room and, you know, did analysis of the room modes and all this kind of stuff. I just wanted to go to see, right? I wanted to see what this all could look like and just really understanding what the gaps are with my current setup. Like I said, I have something, right? But, you know, what are the gaps? The main gaps, you know, there's some details, right? Just specific details like the fact that, you know, this doesn't really address the first reflection point in full because this poster is really also at a key reflection point. So I really need to have probably double this up and put 2 here to kind of get more of this first reflection point covered here. I like the look of, you know, the panels and the posters here, so I don't want to lose that completely. But even just rearranging some of this stuff is a small detail that can make a big difference from what I understand. So make sure to address the first reflection points, including on the other side, the way my room is shaped. I kind of have a first reflection point that's kind of through the stairwell, right? Because the wall here doesn't cover all of it. And that stairwell is just open, right? And of course it goes up, right? So sound just goes in there, it reflects all around, bounces everywhere. But you know, I need to do something to address that. So that's kind of getting the first reflection points, getting rid of some of this echoey and reverb on this side of the space here. The other key gap, of course, is my ceilings. I don't have anything on the ceiling. And part of that, like I said, was just that I felt like having these panels, especially when the ceiling was white, would have just felt like, I don't know, would have changed the feel of the space. I wanted it to feel intimate and cozy and all that stuff as well. Now that the ceiling is pretty much black, like I said, I feel better about doing that. And I don't have to go too crazy, but I'm definitely going to get some stuff up there because that, from what I understand, is going to be a key piece of the dialogue clarity, especially from my center channel, to get that first reflection point off the ceiling, okay? And then the other piece is doing something with my back area, right? You guys saw the intro, but I mean, I have nothing really back there. And I don't know where I got this from. I feel like somebody said this early on, like when I first was kind of setting myself up here. I don't even remember where it was, but I got the impression, at least that's, you know, the idea was like, I wouldn't really need treatments on my back wall because it's so far back, you know, it's literally like 25 feet or something back from my speakers here, that any sound coming from the speakers is just not gonna come from the speaker, go all the way, reflect off the back wall, and then come back and hit me back in my listening position, which is only about 10 feet away, right, from my speaker. So That's a long way back and forth. And they were just like, this is not even going to matter. You're not going to get that, right? Well, that's probably not true, right? And treating the back area just to get rid of all the echo even back there, even for the surround speakers back there, I think could help a lot. And just making sure that the sound coming from the surround speakers back there are, again, a little bit more focused, a little bit cleaner, more directed. Now, there's some interesting details as I started really doing research here that I can't wait to share with you guys. This is, again, the important stuff and what I really want the channel to be about. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the questions I had? What are some of the things I needed to overcome? This is not a typical theater room. It's not, right? I have openings. I don't have full walls. I don't have 4 dedicated corners like a traditional sense. So I can't just stack bass traps, in corners like that. I have bipole speakers, which are, again, more and more rare nowadays I get, but I still love them for what they are. How does that play in, right, to the sound treatment, stuff like that? So there's a lot of cool details to talk about that I definitely want to share with you guys in the next one. But for now, that's it. I just wanted to let you guys know, like, now is the time. Room treatments, I'm really starting to understand how important they are, but I still don't know if they're really going to work for me. I still don't know if they're really going to make a difference here in this awkward kind of non-traditional, theater space, right? Can I get something that can really make a difference here? That's a big question mark, right? So I'm bringing you guys along for the journey, for the ride, to let you. So we're going to get there and see if it's working. But I'm going to try, right? I'm going to try. I'm going to learn along the way, right? And please, if you guys have any helpful suggestions, feedback, questions, whatever it is, like, this is something, one of those things that I really want to have a dialogue with you guys about. So, let me know. I've gotten a bunch of comments over the years I've been doing this channel. Oh, you sound so echoey when you do your videos downstairs and you need to get more room treatment. So people clearly have gotten that memo and heard me talking down here and found the need for it. Will it actually work? We need to find out. So that's all for now, man. True Techno Gamer. Thanks a lot. To the next one. Signing off.